So we just wrapped up a study and writing a paper on this, on using virtual reality essentially as a preview for tourism. Just like you have previews in movie theaters, and that's how you decide to watch that movie or spend your money, virtual reality would be a great platform so that you don't have to actually visit the place and then be disappointed. It would be a nice kind of a
I can't even get a preview on an App Store app.
Yeah,
I mean.
yeah, exactly. So a nice preview to the islands of Hawaii before you actually go there, where you're able to walk around. You hear the waves crashing. With haptics, you're even able to deliver a little bit of the feeling there. And it turns out that it really does make a difference. It makes a difference in terms of what we call a spatial presence. So you feel like you're there, and then you enjoy the experience, and that creates a very positive destination image, and then that opens up wallets. That's when you're like, take my money. Here's my credit card.
I personally don't categorize 360 video, spherical 360, non-3D, as VR.
Right, and I think that one of the reasons that maybe there is less content on this panel about 360 is it's closer to a solved problem than some of these other technologies. You can we have a GoPro Hero rig back at the lab. It shoots 4K video and still high res, even at 240 frames a second. We're putting it in Porsches and off-road RVs. And for closing that experience gap, we did a program, an app for Carnival Cruise Lines to let people to go on a cruise, and it was fantastic. Yes, people can go to a store right now, they can read an article, there's lots of articles online about how to do that well. I think what excites me, I don't want to speak for the rest of the panel, is that this other technology we're talking about replaces computers, not cameras. And when your computer is invisible and it's everywhere all around you, that opens up opportunities that are maybe bigger than going someplace else.
I'm going to run over here. Yes.
The challenge there is that right now people have the headsets over their faces, so doing collaborative VR video is challenging unless you cover that up with an avatar. Google's working on that.
What are the skills that students are going to need to get into this industry as it becomes a bigger part of this?
Let the professor answer that one.
For me, the virtual reality space is by nature interdisciplinary. So they need to know how to work as a team, because not one student is going to be able to solve the entire problem of virtual reality in the development. And so they need to be able to recognize what a single team looks like and be able to work social scientists with engineers, engineers with artists, artists with social. And so all of them need to have a piece that they bring into the development process.
So the data requirements of this type of information getting streamed out to so many people.
Big question, short on time. I can tell you what we're doing in terms of the actual architecture of how you're building this platform. In terms of that face-to-face communication, all parties that are involved, because you are only transmitting a few coordinate points in space and you're running inverse kinematics models on each person's local device, you're using a small fraction of the amount of bandwidth that a typical video call would require. Now you are caching assets and bringing things up on a server. Bigger question I have time to answer, but...
So there's a video, Robert Scoble has a video on Facebook called The Next 2 Clicks of Moore's Law. It's like 30 minutes long. He just gave it at the Leaders Conference in Europe. Go watch it. It explains how this is all going to work with 5G and big data and real-time personalization. Cool. It's called The Next 2 Clicks of Moore's Law by Robert Scoble.
Intersection between AR, VR, and artificial intelligence.
So we're trying to create virtual agents that essentially have naturalistic language and are able to behave very realistically. And you'll see that nonverbal communication comprises about 70% of our communication. How we stand, how we posture, our gaze, gesture, voice tone, everything. And if one of them is off, then that's when you realize that something is weird, that uncanny valley. And so we're trying to see if we can create avatars that do have this naturalistic response.
Really quick, a lot of interesting work going on right now and taking all the sort of now mature technologies, doing image recognition, video recognition, et cetera, in the machine learning space, and translating that into volumetric recognition. And I think it goes back to the point with you look at HoloLens, which is actually providing you a volumetric spatial reconstruction of the environment. As more devices start to have those, and more people have those all everywhere they go, you're going to have more and more larger data sets in order to train more advanced neural nets on. and really come up with some awesome applications for actually taking that volumetric data and doing some very innovative things with it. So I could talk more about it.
There's tons of stuff you can measure, and then you can bring that into the experience.
Yeah, so are we thinking about the ergonomics of standing up with a headset on?
You know, Google loves to talk about the ambient paradigm, where devices kind of fall away, and they want you to make a call on your Google Home device, or ask your kitchen to turn on Mad Men in the living room, and that exists now. So I think we always try to define the new medium in the terms of the current or old medium, and I think keyboards seem efficient today because people want to write long things, but then look at what Twitter has done to prose. There was something on NPR today talking about like how we've had to become more concise, but didn't necessarily get more clear. I think you're going to see voice move in to replace a lot of the long format composition that happens, and you look at eye control to do a lot of the mousing and swiping and tapping that we do now. Google just bought a company called iFluence recently, and they go into detail in that book about how you'll be able to your eyes look at stuff and know that you want it before your brain knows, and so there's a lot in that space to mine.
Very quick, Facebook FA conference, longer term, but they announced a 10-year plan, and they're working on an internal project to do contact lists, brain interfaces, and they're trying to reach basically 120 words per minute typing speed.
The stuff they have now will blow your mind. The stuff that they're going to have in 8 years.
Yeah, and finally, I just wanted to leave with the thought that when we're creating a 3D world, you have to leave the 2D mindset behind, because the 3D world behaves very differently from the 2D world. And so leave the keyboards and the mouses behind, or the mice behind, because it'll be a completely different experience.
So the question was about, that was a great question. What are the applications of these technologies for training and education and lifetime learning? And I think Ian was going to beat me to the punch, so go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
The implications are huge, right? Right now we see AED machines all over the wall, and somebody made a mint hanging all those.
Knowing what someone's heart rate is, and I can paint GPS directions on the floor, it can make first responders out of everybody else on the office floor. So imagine that as a use case for training somebody how to take a box from point A to point B, or how to fix a robot, or how to change oil on your car. It's all contextual, so major auto manufacturers are looking at getting rid of 1,000-page manuals. Aerospace engineers or manufacturing companies are looking at getting rid of some of the outdated projection technology they're using to tell people where to put the parts on the floor, like a sewing pattern. So there's huge opportunities to teach people how to do that. Because it's all contextual to you, it can go at your speed, it can be the stuff that you like, that's appropriate for the thing that you're looking at. So we're already working with clients. I can't talk about it, but there's huge efficiencies and savings in personalizing instruction and making it locative and personal.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow on, same thing. There's a partner we're working with that has a particular division that has to train new onboard employees on a particular piece of compressor equipment, and this thing is 2 tons and requires all those guys to fly into one space so they can stand there with an instructor and go over some frankly fairly minimal training just so they can pass the exam and say they've trained on it. When you look at these technologies offering you now the opportunity to stand with that instructor anywhere on earth and look at that piece of equipment in its full one-to-one fidelity as if you're really standing there in front of it and go through those training processes so you can get that certification, it's a low-hanging fruit, but the amount of fat at a large multinational corporation has in scenarios like that just repeat themselves time and again, you're talking about instant cost savings that can be applied today.
And to Grace's earlier point, you were talking about reacting to people in social situations in a virtual world. There's somebody we met in Charleston at the Dig South conference that was building or had built a sales trainer in partnership with Harvard Business School or someone in terms of putting you in situations where people aren't going to react well to you. In VR or AR, can be personalized to you. So pretty
Yeah, and I
powerful.
have a couple of really good overview chapters in terms of applying virtual reality and augmented reality in education, consumer behavior, health context, and so a lot of that is already written up. I do want to caution, though, that virtual reality will not be the solution for everything. It's good in some ways, but it's going to be worse off than other more traditional media in other things as well, so you have to keep that in mind.
Cool. And with that, we're done.
Thank you.